Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee, and today I'm making a step-by-step install video. We're covering our 2023.5 CVO Road Glide, and I'm going to show you how to install our new A2B interface that was built in conjunction with Siren HD. We're going to show you how to put in that Hertz 1000 watt RMS, 2000 watt peak amplifier in the fairing, along with the Hertz Neo speakers front and rear. We'll go over a lot of specs and details, as well as showing you every nut, bolt, screw that has to be taken out and put back in to install this yourself. You're going to be blown away with the end result. Let me go into a little bit more detail about what we're going to be installing today. First off, let's look at this. This is our Siren HD-A2B interface. So this is an amazing A2B interface to take the factory amp out. It's got a built-in DSP that has a 31-band DSP per speaker channel, and then it has a 7-band parametric EQ. So in the factory radio, as you go to custom EQ and you adjust it, you still have full control over the sound as well. This comes completely pre-tuned from Volunteer Audio to sound its absolute best on your bike with these speakers. This is only available in a full system at volunteeraudio.com. Now that's going to be powering or sending signal into our Hertz SP4.900. Now your factory amplifier was rated at 500 watts. In our test, it did about 78 watts to each speaker, which was really about 320 watts of RMS power. This amplifier is going to do 190 watts RMS to each of your 4 ohm speakers that we're installing today. But on top of that, if you go past 4 speakers and you add Tour Pack speakers or lower speakers, you're going to drop that impedance to 2 ohm and it's going to do 290 watts RMS. We've got a dyno video showing those results. It's an amazing amount of power, but really it's more than 3 times the continuous power that factory amp was, and it's loud enough now to hear it very, very clearly at highway speeds, full helmet, short windshield, whatever factor you have going on, you're going to be able to hear your music. And it sounds better, not just louder. Now we're also going to be putting a set of Hertz SX165 Neo speakers in the fairing. I'll show you step by step how to put those in. They're very loud, very clear, and completely waterproof. And now we have the new Hertz SX690H 6x9. So we're going to take those factory 5x7s out of the lids. These were designed and developed specifically for the CVO lids. They're going to drop right in. We'll put a gasket on them so they're watertight. Very, very easy install. We'll go over that. And in the middle of all this, that factory battery is so weak and there's so much electronics on this. We're going to be installing our Titan 8 battery from Excess Power. We're going to use the Reserve series on this. It's 750 cranking amps, so almost double your factory cranking amps. Yet it has an extremely long 60 amp hour playtime. So as we're demoing the bike and we're playing it longer, it's not going to run our battery down. And these radios are really finicky. If the battery gets below 12 volts at all, it cuts the audio way down. Hard for us to demo, hard to show off to your friends. Last but not least, at Volunteer Audio, we've tried to think of everything. We're going to take those factory grills, we're going to remove the factory logos that don't say Hertz, and then we have 3 different options in look. It's called hog badges that are available in our kits that we'll put on there. So I'll show you about those more too as we go on. So let's get to the bike, let's get it took apart. We're going to see what this thing sounds like at the end. All right, so the first step on our bike is going to be able to get it in a position we can work on it. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to take our left side rear bag off. It's going to give us access to our fuse panel. Then we're going to turn the ignition on, pull the 60 amp main fuse, cut the ignition back off, and we're going to have all of our power then disconnected. This is going to keep us from storing any check engine lights or codes in the system from unplugging all these various parts. This, even though you've cut the ignition off, it takes a while for the computers to go to sleep. We don't want to store any of those faults. Now, if you do store a fault, maybe you don't follow this exactly, we have a video showing you how to go into that factory infotainment system, access those codes, and clear them. But I want to tell you, if you have a light on and you don't see codes in there, go ahead and clear all the modules anyways. That'll get it took care of. It doesn't always show you a code when there is a history code. So if you need help, you always have free tech support at Volunteer Audio. Get to that point, you can give us a call at 1-844-30-AUDIO. We'll walk you through it. But let's try to do it the right way so we don't have to make that call. So first, I'm going to open up my left rear bag. I'm going to go ahead and undo the retainers. Just untwist those and loosen them. I'm going to lean my bag outward, and I'm going to unplug that factory rear connector. Now I'm going to set my bag over to the side. All right, so at this point, we're just going to pull that rear side cover off. It just pressure fits in these 3 clips into some rubber bushings. And we're going to go up here to the top. You'll see this little plastic cap or rubber cap. Pull it off. Now I want you to turn your ignition on. And then pull this fuse. Now just make sure you turn your ignition back off before you put it back in. I'll go ahead and turn it off now. So this does a couple things. It does keep you from having some code issues. It also disarms the factory alarm. So when we disconnect our battery, it's not going to be blaring in our ear telling us that somebody's still on the bike. All right, so now the next step is to make sure you protect that front fender. We've put a Harley fender protector on. If you don't have that, grab a thick towel or something to put over it, because you could drop a screwdriver, a bolt, something that would land on here and chip your paint or dent that fender. We don't want that to happen. I'm going to grab a T25 Torx driver, and now we're going to start disassembly of the front fairing. All right, so now starting at the windshield, we're going to remove the 4 bolts on each side. Some of these are T25, some are T27. The T25 will work on all of them. It kind of makes your life simpler because you can just use that one tool, and they're not tight enough that you have to have a T27 to break them loose. As you take your bolts out, make sure to put them in either some sort of storage container or lay them out very organized so when you get done, you know all the screws have been put back in and you can put the right ones in the right place. Just slide your windshield up out of these clips and set it over to the side. Now I want you to move to the front portion here. What we're going to do is we're going to grab this piece of trim. It's just pressure fit in. I'm just going to grab it with my hand, kind of with my fingernails. I'm going to pull it straight toward me. There's a clip on each end. We just want to break that loose. Now we're going to take this over and set it over on our bench as well. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove 6 more screws. We're going to use our same T27. There's 3 on each of these windshield brackets. Let's go ahead and loosen all those. I'm going to take them loose all the way, but I'm going to leave them sitting in this so later when I go back on, I don't have to try to find these screws to go in the holes. All right, so now that those are out, this little piece of plastic here is going to lift straight up and set over to the side. These clips are loose and will slide out if you're not careful, so just make sure you don't lose those on the floor. All right, so there's 4 screws here now. There are 2 going straight down. I'm going to remove those last. I'm going to go ahead and remove the 2 up here on each side of that vent area. And then we're going to move on to the inner fairing. We'll remove our speaker grills and remove those next couple screws. All right, let's move over here to our speaker grills and let's go on taking those off. Now, when you look at these grills, they may look slightly different. I've already installed some hog badges here just for reference to show a couple of the different looks. I want you to do a couple things here. There are 2 plastic clips that just lip over this inner fairing that are easy to break, and we don't want to break them. So we're going to put a little pressure on the bottom so it doesn't try to pop out there while we grab the top and just kind of pull out. There's a little pressure clip there, and if we work our way across, there's another clip here on the other side, and that's going to keep from breaking these bottom tabs off as we remove our grill. Same thing on the other side, a little pressure at the bottom, pulling out at the top. They're on there, there's quite a bit of pressure. So just that little bit of extra pressure at the bottom keeps you from breaking those clips. All right, so that gives us access to our stock speakers, but it also gives us access to 2 more screws, 1 on each side, right inside this grill area. And we're still using that same T25 that we've used from the beginning. All right, so now we're going to move to this inner fairing area. You're going to see there are 2 screws that go through here holding these air vents on our fairing together. The top one can stay in. It doesn't actually go to anything that we need to remove. So we're just going to remove the bottom one on each side. All right, we're going to return back to the front of the fairing. The only thing holding the fairing on at this point are these 2 bolts that go straight down. They're going to be the last ones removed, and they're going to be the first ones we put back in when we go back together later. I'm just using my body to hold the fairing on while I remove these. That way it doesn't fall off. We don't want to mess any paint up. Now that they're out, I'm just going to grab this vent, just kind of wiggle, and just slide this off. There's a couple hooks that grab on each side. So we just pull that out slightly, and it'll release. Now be a little careful of this antenna here. We don't want anything to grab it and mess it up. All right, just for ease of use later and running some wiring, we're going to go ahead and pull our headlight out as well. Now some of you are going to see that you have a headlight wire that runs up and over the amp, and then it goes back down and behind the headlight. Makes no sense to me at all. So I've already rerouted this one. I would tell you once we get the headlight out to take that cable, feed it back through, just leave it behind the headlight. I'll show you that a little bit more in depth here in a few minutes. We also have a garage door opener. They call this the HomeLink module. This is factory on all CVO models. We're going to also be relocating it behind the headlight. We'll go over that shortly as well. But let's get our headlight out. We're going to have 2 bolts at the bottom. You'll notice there's actually bolts all around here, but we want to make sure we're going to take out the 2 that are actually going through the ears from the headlight. The bolts look the same, so they're easy to get the wrong one. Now there are 4 going across the top. There's 2 you're going to see out here easily, but there's also 2 that are recessed up in here. So I'm going to take the recessed ones out first. Go ahead and get those loose. All right, so as you're taking the last one out, again, holding pressure or lifting up on the light to make sure that you don't let it fall on that fender once you get all the hardware out. And this stock headlight is actually relatively heavy. All right, so now I'm going to grab it and slide it forward. Now we're going to unplug the headlight. All right, so now what I just did to unplug the headlight, this connector on the bottom has a black push clip that if you press in, when you press that, it releases this clip and allows it to slide off. You definitely want to make sure you push all these clips. We don't want to break anything. Now our HomeLink is going to be our next part I'm going to be removing. It just snaps into this little factory plastic bracket. I'll set it to the side, and then I'm going to unbolt the HomeLink module. Now I've got 1 bolt out of here because we used it for testing for a bracket we had built. I just didn't put it back in yet. So take this out and set it to the side. Next step, I'm going to remove the factory amplifier. So to do this, we're going to take this little red tab on the end and you're going to slide it out. By sliding it this way, it releases its clip. We're going to press the clip, and that's going to allow our plug-in to come loose and start to slide backwards. Now you're not going to maybe have quite enough room to fully undo it, so I've got it loose, but now I'm going to unbolt the amp. Same tool we've been using. Take the 4 screws out of the factory amp. With our new A to B module, there's no reason to keep the amp in the fairing. That gives us plenty of room to put our larger amplifier. We're using all plug-and-play harnessing, 0 modification done to the bike. And because it communicates to the radio using the exact OE A to B chips, there's no reason that it will stop any kind of software updates and no reason to void any of your factory warranties. All right, so we're just going to take our amp now and set it to the side as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take out our front speakers. Same T25 Torx. I mean, this is our favorite tool right now. Take the 4 screws out around the perimeter of these. We do not have to remove the speaker pods. The only time you'd remove this pod is maybe if you're adding like sound skins, some other material to it to make it sound better. It sounds amazing as is. We'll offer that as well. We'll do some videos on that in the future. But for now, we're just going to take this speaker out with these 4 screws. Now we're going to bring the bottom of the speaker out first and then slide it out because it kind of goes under this lip. That's going to give you room to get it out. Then we're just going to pull each one of these speaker wire leads loose. The clear one is going to be your positive. The black one is your negative. We'll go over that again as we put our speakers in. All right, so retain these screws. We're going to use the same screws to put our Hertz speaker in. It's a direct replacement. It goes right back in the same hole with no modification as well. And it'll plug into these same connectors. All right, let's do a quick comparison between our 2 speakers. So here's the stock speaker. I've never had a stock speaker in anything that I thought was great. There's a lot of limitations, no matter what brand name they put into it, to things like cost, efficiency. I mean, Harley's going to put 1 million of these in bikes. If they can save $1 on each one, you can do the math. All right, so the magnet on the back of this speaker is very lacking. They normally use neodymium magnets in motorcycle, which are extremely strong, and they don't have to be very large. But this one is so weak, it won't even pick up the screws that held it in. Whereas we can take our Hertz speaker, which has the same neodymium technology, but just a really large magnet. Now the magnet's important because all the speaker is a copper coil that power runs through, and that magnetic field and those positive and negative currents make that speaker move and generate our sound. The stronger this is, the more power it handles, the more abuse it handles as well. There's a lot more design to that, but that's just a very simplistic breakdown. But you'll notice it absolutely picks up the screws that the Rockfords won't even come close to doing. Now I can grab the Rockford speaker, but the Rockford speaker won't even grab a screwdriver. So very, very strong, well-built speaker, 3-year warranty even against blowing. sealed and weatherproof, and it just has a much better driver, much better tweeter. So I'm gonna get my screws pried off the magnet. Let's go over and put it in the bike. All right, so before we put our speakers in, I want you to take a pair of pliers. I just want you to squeeze the tip of each one, enough that we're closing that gap just to make these have a better connection. Don't overly tighten them, because if you completely close that gap, you're not gonna get it to slide on your new speaker. All right, so we've got a Hertz speaker. We're gonna look at our terminals on the back. You're gonna see they're clearly marked negative and positive, and we're gonna use these two terminals toward the back. I know they're the same size, and these are slightly different sized, but they're gonna grip it and they're gonna do a great job of it. So our negative, which is our black one, is gonna go on this terminal that's marked with the straight line. The one with the plus symbol is our positive, and we're gonna take our clear one and we're gonna feed it on there. These are on really well and tight. Same thing as before, sliding the upper part in first is then gonna let us get the bottom to drop in place. We're gonna line it up with the factory screw holes, and we're just gonna screw it back in. Same thing again, positive on the plus. A good tight connection there. Black one on the negative. Sliding the speaker up and dropping it in as well. All right, so now we're gonna run larger power and ground from our new amp back to the battery. A lot of people have asked, why do I have to do that? The factory wiring is very small to run a smaller amplifier. Without that larger power and ground being run, there's no way to generate that extra power. So we could not use the original leads. It's just not big enough. They didn't plan on us having a good amplifier. So we're gonna take our seat off. In this case, it's the CVO seat. So we're gonna unthread our factory screw from the back here. Normally I keep a set of Robert Becker seat locks on here to make sure nobody can steal the seat, but I wanted this as much as stock as possible as we do the video. We do have those available at Volunteer Audio as well. If you don't want somebody to steal your seat, those locks go right in here. Very, very nice. No way to steal it. We're just gonna slide our solo seat or our add-on seat back so it exposes the solo. From there, we're just gonna push this cloth in where we have access to the other two bolts. We also have a set of locks that go on here if you like to ride with just the front seat on to keep people from being able to steal it as well. All right, so we're just gonna lift up on our seat and slide it backwards. All right, so on the gas tank, there's just a couple of vent lines we're gonna disconnect. We're gonna disconnect the electrical sending unit for the fuel level as well as the fuel line. All of these things are really simple. I'm about to show it to you. Don't let this intimidate you. This is a very easy process, and it takes, in real life, about as much time as you're gonna see here in this video. We are gonna need a 13mm socket to remove the 4 bolts on the gas tank, and the 2 front ones have a little rubber cap that's covering them that you just grab a hold of and just slide off. So here's that little cap. So take that off on both sides, and you can do this without pulling these little shields off. But if they're in your way and you can't get to it with the tools you have access to, just remove that top screw on each side, set those away. It's gonna give you a lot more room to get in. That little chin spoiler does create a lot less space to get to the bolts. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the 2 bolts at the rear of the gas tank, and I'm gonna disconnect this vent. So this one, we're just gonna push that rubber and slide it out. Let's go ahead and take these 2 rear bolts out. All right, so now we're gonna disconnect our fuel line. I have a paper towel here because sometimes you'll get a drip or 2 of fuel. It's nothing drastic. There's this silver sleeve, and you're gonna push this sleeve upward. It's gonna unclick and let that fuel line come down. So it's that easy to disconnect. It's normally that easy to reconnect. It's not very often that we have any problems with that. So it cuts the gas off at the same time. No matter how much fuel you have in here, it's not gonna be leaking. And next, right next to it, you'll follow this wire over here to the top of the little frame rail above the engine, and there's another plug there you've got to press up on a connector and slide out. So there's that connector. I just pressed in on that same black tab and unplugged it. That's the only electrical connector we need to disconnect. All right, so my battery ratchet makes this next part really simple. I'm gonna go ahead and take the front bolts out, but I don't have to try to swing a ratchet like you may have to. So I'm gonna feed it from the bottom up to the bolt and then start taking those out. This side is a little trickier on space. All right, so we have one more vent line to disconnect up here at the front of the tank. So you'll see there are 2 lines. One has a clamp on it. We're not disconnecting that. We're simply going to do the same thing. Let's push this rubber loose from this black plastic line. Now our tank is going to be ready to lift. Now there is an exception to this. This vent line is connected to the front with that clamp, and it runs on the frame. There's 2 clips. You just take your finger and you get those clips pulled out enough that that releases the line. So now I'm going to lift my tank up partially, reach my hand under and start disconnecting. I'm going to follow that line and just take it out of those 2 clips. Something you got to feel for and do blindly. There we go. I've got them disconnected. I'm going to set my tank over to the side. All right, so these are the 2 plastic clips I was talking about. You just pull out on them and it lets that line drop down. There's one in front and one behind. You'll feel under there, just pull that out. So far we've used 2 tools. We're going to use a total, I think, of maybe 3. We're going to have this T25 Torx. We have our 13 millimeter we just used on a gas tank. Then we're going to use a Phillips screwdriver to take loose the battery cables. So not a lot of tools needed for this. Most people have ready access to it. Next step I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the parts here on top of the battery loose, so we have access to our battery. We're going to remove this cover. First, I want you to disconnect this main plug-in that goes back to the rear. This does rear lighting as well as rear speakers. Just unplugging it to make access to the battery. We're going to take both of our heated gear connectors and lift them out. Unclick those. Take this antenna for your key and lift up a little bit and slide it forward. So you tilt it up and then slide it. That gets it off this clip, so it's over to the side. Same thing on this accessory connector. Now, this little plastic tray has a clip in the front. So unclip that, slide it backwards, and that's going to let us set these harnesses over a little bit more out of our way. Now, we pulled that fuse out earlier, and one of the main reasons we did it is this is no longer the ECM. On the older bikes it was. On this one it's actually called the body control module, and it has a sensor inside of it that knows if your bike tips over. So if you haven't killed power and you stand this up, it thinks your bike fell on the ground, and it's not going to let you restart your bike till you do a reset process. So that fuse being out keeps that from happening. There's just a little plastic clip back here that we're going to push back just to let this come loose, slide it over to the side, and yes, we do have to stand it up to access our battery and its connections. Now I'm going to be replacing this battery. I know this is a newer bike, it's a newer battery, but it's still very weak. And we find that if I don't put it on a tender, maybe 3 days to a week, it won't start. It's just that low. So I want to put a much stronger battery with a lot better reserve. And I've already done that on our other 2 newer bikes, and it has worked great. So T25 to one more screw on top of the battery cover here. And then this little plastic tray is going to lift up and slide out, giving us access to the battery. All right, so here's that 3rd tool, that Phillips screwdriver. Now you'll notice I've already added a battery tender port from NOCO to my stock battery. I did this because the factory battery tender port works if the bike is turned off. We do a lot of demo time where we have the ignition on. I'd like for my battery to still be charged even if the key is on. So I had to add a standalone charger. It's fused, but that's that extra wiring. Yours may not have that. So we're going to remove our positive and negative terminals simply because I'm going to change the battery all the way out. Normally, if we're not changing the battery, I'm just taking these off one at a time and reconnecting my new power wire. Also pulling that fuse, disabled that alarm, so we shouldn't get yelled at by the alarm as we take the battery out as well. So the factory battery is pretty heavy. It weighs about 22 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot till you're trying to pick it up with your fingertips. But they give you this little strap from the factory that goes around behind the battery. If you get your terminals out of the way and you pull this strap, it actually lifts the battery up for you so you can get a better grip. All right, so we're using the new Titan 8 lithium battery. This battery has got titanium alloy wrapped around each one of the cells inside. This makes it where it cannot thermally fail or catch fire. It's a big problem with LiPo or lithium phosphate batteries, especially when they're charged incorrectly. Because of this, it can actually be charged with any kind of tender. We're still going to recommend a lithium tender to get the longest life and to fully charge the battery, but this is safe and works great with the factory charging system on your Harley. And it charges extremely fast. So it's a very short ride. Even if you've been playing the audio and you've drawn it down, a very short ride will charge it all the way back up. Now they give us 4 terminals on top of our battery. Some are for accessories in the rear. We're not going to need those, but we want to make sure we lay these out correctly with our negative on the right side of the bike and the positive on the left side. It's the exact size as factory, weighs 7 pounds instead of 22. So we're going to take our little strap. We still want to use it if we ever have to take our battery out, so we're going to lay it in here correctly, move our other terminals to the side, and start sliding it into position. As I go back together, I'll reinstall my tender. Let me go ahead and get our new power and ground wire over here so we can go over how to connect it to the battery also. All right, so in your kit, you're going to get a much larger 8-gauge copper power and ground. It's already going to have a 60 amp fuse holder with fuse installed and zip tied closed. Ring terminals are already on it. Just route this into the fairing and plug this into our new amp. But we're going to start back here at the battery. We're going to go ahead and connect it. All these wires are in a way that you can't short them out, so no need to wait and connect it last. We're going to be good. So I'm going to start with my negative terminal. It's going to be my black one on my NOCO and the black one on our new power and ground cable. It does use the same factory threads, factory screw holes. This was developed and designed to go in your Harley. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Let me get it started here. Try to put all my terminals where they're facing toward the front of the bike as I tighten it down. Make sure they're really tight. We don't want them to vibrate loose. Now I'm going to take each one of these wires and just kind of bend it downward. Bending that ring terminal slightly. Now here's our fuse holder we were talking about. We want to position that in front of the battery. We're going to leave us enough lead here and route it around all of this that we can run up this backbone here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and put our cover back on our battery so we can get everything kind of sealed back up here. All right, plastic cover over the battery, sliding it back in like it was originally. Bringing it down here where we can put our T30 in place. This battery is also jump start safe. Most lithium batteries cannot be jump started. So a lot of benefits to the Titan 8 technology. And one of the main ones is it has an expected life of over 20 years when properly maintained. BCM's been dropped back in, slid back in. I'm going to grab this cover. This is the cover that kind of holds a couple of these lines in place for us later. It's going to go over the BCM and then it's going to snap in, locking all of this in a little bit stronger. So we're going to continue just plugging everything back in where it was. Sliding each one of the connectors in. Here's that accessory connector. Slide it in so it locks in. Take our antenna and slide it where it goes. And then put each one of your heated gear plugs back in place. Very simple process when you know how to do it and you've been shown the steps. All right, so now we're going to run this power and ground up the backbone of the bike. This is where all the factory wiring is. It is the right place. A lot of people will tell you, oh, you can take a fish tape, pull it through the frame, pull it under the tank. This keeps it from the engine heat. This keeps it in the right place. It's where Harley ran the wiring, and that's where we were going to run it as well. So to get access to this, you're probably going to have a couple zip ties that were wrapped around this from the factory you're going to need to cut. This is our demo bike. I've done a lot of testing. I've already had this off multiple times. I've cut and removed those two zip ties. If you see them, just cut them, pull them off. It's also going to be wrapped with a couple pieces of what we call Tessa tape. It's an automotive grade electrical tape, and you're going to cut one side of it to where you can lift this up to get access into that area. So we're just going to unstick that one side, and then we're going to take and just unclip this cover on the end. As you come up, just kind of wiggle it, and you'll unclip it as you go. When you get up here to the brake lines, you're going to slide those over to the side, and that's going to expose all of that factory wiring. So now we're just going to take some wiring. We've got plenty, so I'm going to leave a few extra inches back in here for any future battery disconnects if need be. And I'm just going to start fishing it up through here with that original wiring. When we get up here toward the front, I want to cross over to the left side. We're going to take it out on this left front passageway. So now we're just going to snap our cover right back over the top here. Now make sure none of the factory wiring kind of makes its way out any cracks or crevices as well. You get it all snapped back in like it would have been factory. And then put that brake line back where it was and put your Tessa tape back over as well. All right, we're almost ready to put our gas tank back on, but first we've got to get this wire a little bit further toward the front. All right, so take your wire and I want you to feed it past the front forks and just bring it out on the other side. At that point, I want you to go ahead and turn your front wheel to the left, and that's going to give you access to this plastic plate. That's the plate that all the wiring runs in behind. I'm going to grab that plate at the front. I'm going to slide it backwards, and as I do, I'm going to pull out, and it's going to actually come loose or release so I can lean it out to get my wiring ran where it goes. Once that's done, there's actually a hole in the frame here. Just going to push my wiring through that hole. Let's go to the other side where the headlight was and fish it into the fairing. We're going to go ahead and take it now and just pull it on through. guiding it with that factory wiring. As you see, we have plenty of lead. We're actually just going to need about that much lead, so we'll take and run a little bit of it in here behind the headlight. All right, so don't forget to take that little cover, snap it back in. Same thing, push the plastic up against the frame, slide it back, and it'll fall into a groove. So same thing done here, just to cover that wiring back up. So I've snapped it back in, and then I'm going to take a zip tie, a single zip tie, and just secure that power wire right on the side of the frame with that original wiring. Once you've got your zip tie tight, I want you to flush cut it. All right, so now that we've got this back together, we're going to go ahead and put our gas tank back on, get it back in place, and then we'll move to the fairing and get our amp installed. All right, so we're going to go back on with our gas tank. I want you to make sure this vent is running behind this front metal as you slide in. I'm going to slide it forward close to where it goes, but I'm going to do what I did before. I got to lift the gas tank up, and I'm going to make sure that this plastic line clips back into each one of these locations on the frame. All right, got both of them clipped in. So I'm just going to make sure that my wiring is coming out where it's supposed to, and it is. It did not get in the wrong place or get pinched in any way. I'm going to start our bolts on our gas tank. You're going to start all these before you tighten any of them. So now I'm going to go tight with our bolts. Make sure that we plug back in each one of our vent lines. So we've got the one here that was under the tank. We've got the one here at the front of the tank. Let's make sure they all get plugged back in. These are just little overflow vents. If you were to overfill the gas, that diverts that gas to the ground instead of running out up here on the bike or on the engine. All right, so that one's plugged in. All right, for the fuel line, you'll see it already wants to line up with that hole. Just raise that chrome sleeve up again. While it's up, push up on your line, and you'll hear it click into place. Fuel's reconnected. Now I'm going to take this plug with my hands. I'm going to feel for that connector underneath here. I'm going to plug it back in. This isn't always the easiest thing to do, but it's definitely not impossible either. So just take your time. Line it up straight with that clip facing down. You'll hear it click in. All right, so we're going to move to the front. We're going to get our amp installed in the fairing, and then we'll move back and we'll get our speakers and our lids. All right, so let's talk about the relocation of the garage door opener first. It's going to be very simple. We're just going to take this little gray clip that's in it. We're going to pull this backwards. We're going to unclip it and unplug it. We're also going to see we have one of these little Christmas tree retainers going into this factory metal tray. And I'm going to take that loose, and I want you to pull this wire just right back through the hole it was coming out of, back in behind the headlight. There's actually quite a bit of room behind the headlight. So it's very easy to relocate this. It's going to be as simple as plugging it back in under here. We're going to secure it up in here, and we're just going to put some zip ties on the wiring, and it picks up great there. We've already tested it. We didn't lose any range. It's out of our way, and it allows us to put our A2B module in the best place so we can shorten all the wiring for it to make sure that it lasts as long as possible. Let's look at this headlight wiring again. You're going to see that what I did was it had that extra long headlight wiring, and it's really long that ran all the way up and over. So I pulled that back in here, and I just fed part of it this way, part of it this way. Listen, that's where all the factory wiring is. It's going to be fine to be in those holes, and it's going to give us the ability now to just have that simple headlight connection where it should have been behind the headlight. So the next thing I want you to take this power lead, and you're going to come into this area here, and I want you to feed it just right across into this next compartment, just right left of center. So feed it through this direction. Now I want you to leave a little bit of the excess still yet up in here, because we're going to have a little bit of extra. That's good. That allows us to take things in and out later without having to fight around it. I'm going to slide a little bit of it under that garage door opener, and I want just enough that I can plug into here. This is going to sit right on top of the headlight. There's a nice passageway for it there, and yeah, we're good to go. Very simple to get to this part. I'm going to go ahead and put our headlight back in, and then we'll put our amp in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and plug our headlight back in. I'm going to lift that power wire just up here, and it's going to go right between these two ears on our headlight. Let's just slide our headlight back into position. Go ahead and start one of these easy bolts up here at the top. And we'll start some of these inside here as well. I'm starting all of them. Once I get them all in, then I'll start tightening them all the way down. Total of 6 bolts. All right, so now I'm going to tighten them. All right, so when you get your amp from Volunteer Audio, it's going to be completely set up. We've already programmed the DSP inside the A2B unit. So all that's built and programmed for the bike perfectly. We've uncapped the amp, set all of the settings on the amp perfectly to go along with it. Do not open it, do not adjust it. You will not make it sound better than what we've already got it. If you want adjustment, go into the radio and adjust the EQ. All the preset EQs still function, and we'll go over that at the end a little bit more in detail. It's going to sound great just the way it is, and I think you'll be blown away. But don't get in here. You're not going to make it better. You're only going to make it worse. All right, so we're going to be using our factory amp connector. We're going to use this power and ground connector. Now, as time goes on, this has just been released. This is the first week of the release. I've built amp-specific plates that actually mount the amp to the factory 4 bolt holes. It's not necessary, but we did it because we just feel like it's really professional to do so. Those parts are not available yet. They're 45 to 60 days out. We have 2 brackets. One is going to be available for the module itself. The other one will hold the amp itself down. Now, we're going to install this amp with a piece of Velcro. We've been doing that on all the 23 and older bikes for a long time when we have a flat metal tray. It's not going anywhere, and this Velcro is an industrial grade Velcro. It's extremely strong, so nothing's going to move. This amp is completely sealed. It is Class D. There are no fans. There's no cooling issues. Velcroing it down is ideal. So I'm just going to remove the backing off my amp, and I'm going to show you where we're going to stick it in here. Now, when you look down in here, you'll see we've been testing a lot of things in here. So there's a few little scratches, but you'll see there's a little metal hump on each side. And we're going to get our amp as far in as we can go, which is going to put it between all of our connectors and set down right between these 2 humps. That amp is in there and it is solid. So now I'm going to take and pull just a little bit extra lead from this amp connector up. I don't need a lot, just maybe ½ an inch or so I can get it to rotate around this amp. There's some excess down in there. We just have to fish it up to where we're at. There we go. Now I'm going to take my original factory amp connector and I'm going to plug it in right here. This is the same weather tight factory plug. Clicked it in, push our red piece in. And now that's just going to sit in here just like so. Now we're going to do a little bit of wire management on the other side. And here's the idea. We have a 3D printed bracket. We're going to have our production brackets here before long. You're not going to get billed for them now. If you want to add this later as a part of a package, you can absolutely buy it separately. And it's going to bolt into those factory brackets right where our garage door opener was, and then bolt our A2B module right down on top of it. Now, if you're watching this video and this wasn't part of your kit, that means you bought it well before it came out. And we're going to do the same thing with a little piece of Velcro. We have a lot of room here. This fairing comes forward quite a bit and then wraps back to the headlight. So we've got a great spot here where water never gets. That gives us plenty of room for this to go. And on top of that, this is completely built weatherproof, watertight seals, sealed up. We've conformal coated the circuit boards. So I'm not worried about weather, but it's always nice to put things out of the weather when you can. All right, so if you're using Velcro as a method, which works great too, we're going to go ahead and clean an area of the top of the headlight here with isopropyl alcohol. So just the area it's going to stick, I'm just going to clean it here. Like I say, if you later decide you want to do the bracket, it'll bolt right in and hold it as well in the same location. So just let that alcohol fully dry. We're seeing it kind of dry away here. I'm going to peel off this backing that's on it. And I want you to look at this piece of plastic for a reference. We're going to take our module and we're going to line up the back edge of it right with that piece of plastic, and we're just going to stick it down. Just like that. So now I'm going to move my plug back where I wanted it, right here vertically. And now we're going to take, and we've got to do a little bit of wire fishing here. We're going to take this speaker output of the amp. Actually, I'm gonna do the power one first. I'm gonna bring this power, this is called a choke. This black part that's big around is on the amp to prevent any FM interference. So here's a good time to talk about that. The FM antenna on this bike is not amplified. It's hidden in the fairing. There is no mask. It doesn't pick up great the way it is. We really don't want our amp to interfere. So the Hertz amplifier is designed where it doesn't actually send out any frequencies that would block FM. On top of that, the way we're installing it, everything's done for a reason. All of that is away from the antenna section or the tuner section of the radio, the antenna that's coming out, for even more protection from any interference. But these chokes make it, they're a little big, so they're a little harder to get in the fairing. We're gonna put them underneath the factory speaker wire plug here and just kind of push it back in here. I'm gonna go ahead and plug in my power of my amp. It is gonna be a little spark there. That is normal. Don't let that freak you out. And then I'm gonna slide the extra wire right back in on top of the headlight so that we don't have any of it hanging out here. And that's essentially all we're wanting to get done, is to get that just kind of tucked in like so. Now the next part, the speaker wire is a little long too, so we're gonna actually feed it toward the front some. Actually, I'm gonna feed it like this, and then come back down so we can try to get all this wiring in here where it's nice and clean. We're gonna set our RCAs in on this side, stand that plug back up like we had it earlier. And get the speaker lead in the right position. Yep, there we go. All right, so with a little finagling, we got our speaker wire connection over to this side of the bolt that was going through for our headlight. RCA's on this end. You'll see there is a 5th RCA. It says channel 5. Channel 5 is our subwoofer output. So later on, we'll be introducing to you a drop-in subwoofer for the rear that goes into bags. It's gonna have a really nice Hertz amp and sub in it. You're gonna love it, but it's gonna plug into this connection. We've already thought about that, build it into our interface. We even have some cool things where you can control it through the radio. We'll go over that at a later time as those get closer to it. But I just wanna let you know we've already thought about you. We've already done the work to make sure that we have access to that if you later want to do those add-ons. This thing's so new. We've got so many ideas, so many plans, so many new products, and we can only roll them out so fast and make sure they're all perfect. All right, so now I've got all my wiring where I want it here. I'm gonna take a zip tie and just kind of secure it to stay there. Wiring was all engineered to an exact length to make sure that we could take this, and we're just gonna go around our front speaker wiring here. What we're doing is we're essentially just grabbing this power wire and this RCA wire. We're just securing it down to make sure that it stays down where it's supposed to go. All right. Just gonna flush cut that zip tie. So you have installed your amp. As you noticed, other than just finagling a few wires around, it's a pretty easy install. And our fairing will now slide right back on. The reason we can't put this up here is there's a vent that dips down in the middle. So it really needs to go out to the front. Now, if you later want to get that bracket from us, or maybe it's 45 days since this video's been made and it's already in your package, then you're going to be good to go to just bolt it in place. But either way, it's a really good place to put it. No problem going back together. And we're going to show you that here in a second because it's time to put the fairing back on. All right, so we're just going to slide our fairing on just like we took it off. There's a couple things that we need to make sure that we line up well. So on each side, there's actually some clips on your outer fairing that have to go in behind the edges of the inner fairing. At the top, we have a similar situation where we have a couple clips that have to feed underneath. We just want to make sure none of those are out of place. Same thing on our other side as far as lining up its clips. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll get part of it in. I'll start this one screw and then I'm going to go look at that side again. Can't be in two places at once, but this little screw will help us hold it till we can be. All right, so now I'm going to come back over here and lip it in behind, top and bottom, making sure everything is in where it goes. All right, we're looking pretty good. I'm going to start this screw as well. I'm not going to tighten these down yet. Do make sure they end up put back in because if without them, there's a hole into the top of your speaker pod that whistles. So definitely make sure all the bolts go back in place. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go on each side of the vent. I'm going to install the screws at the top here. Again, using that T25 Torx driver. Not a lot of tools needed. They've made this really simple if you know what you're doing and where you need to go with all the bolts. All right, now just double checking that my fairing's back in place, and it is. On this side anyways, I'm going to put the bolt in at the speaker pod, and I'm just going to go ahead and go tight with it. Helps pull everything together. Double checking the gap on this side, everything looks good. This will pull it in the rest of the way. All right, so I'm going to make sure and finish tightening these top ones, including the ones that we had going straight down. All right, now we're going to grab those two that go at the bottom of the inner fairing on each side. So there's just one on each side, but at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and feed it in. Should line right up. If it doesn't line up, you didn't have your side clipped in the right place. Now, we're going to move back up here to the top. So we're going to grab that portion of the plastic that has the little clips on it to hold our windshield, making sure we don't drop those as we get here. Sliding it in, it just sets in place. Nothing snaps in about that. We're going to re-snap in that front cover. And one thing you got to watch on here is there's a front lip and there's two little front parts that we've got to make sure clip back in the right place. If you don't pay attention, you'll lap those over wrong, and then you'll have a gap you're looking at through here. Let's get our windshield brackets back bolted on. We're making good time. This isn't a terribly hard project by any means. Even with filming, it's not slowing us down a lot. There's not a lot of very technical aspects we have to touch on. All right, we'll go ahead and put our windshield on now. So each one of these bolts has a little rubber bushing. Make sure it goes back on. That's what actually holds your windshield tight. Without it, the bolt will bottom out, the windshield won't be tight, and you could possibly end up cracking the windshield that way. Now you will see some little, almost looks like stress cracks around these molds. They're really just mold marks. So if you get in there looking, like there's a little one looks like a crack here. It's not, that was factory. We looked at them when they were brand new and it looked like that. And since then we've realized it's on all of them. Really need to get a good Clockworks windshield because this factory windshield is pretty terrible. You just kind of eat the wind at about 40 miles an hour, and I can't seemingly get it adjusted rather than just wear a full face helmet. So we'll be getting a new windshield soon. So at this point, we're going to snap our front grills back on. We've already put our Hog Badge logos. This is a super simple process. We got some videos going over it. I'm sure Eric's going to link it above so you can check out one of those videos. But you simply peel off that original logo and you self-stick on our new logos. We have three different looks. We've got black with a silver outline with silver writing. That goes well with the factory tank badges and some of the accents already on it. We also offer it in all black with silver writing in Hertz, and then we offer it in an all silver, like I've got over here, with a black writing that says Hertz. So three different looks. We've got the sets on the website. Very inexpensive. It's going to cost you about 50 bucks to get enough to do your whole bike, all four logos. So check those out. Now, if you want custom logos, these can say anything you want within reason. And there's a Hog Badge has their own website, so go there. You could put your MC, riding club, whatever it is you have, you could put those logos on here. Maybe you have a nickname you want on there. They can custom make them. It's going to cost you a little bit more because we buy them in bulk specifically for this system. But I want you to let you know that that is an option. It's pretty cool. All right, so we're going to go back together with our grill, just slipping over the bottom, lining up the top clips, and just pushing them in place. Same thing on this side, lipping in the bottom and getting the clips in. All right, so we're going to move to the back. At this point, all our wiring is done. Everything's back together. So I'm going to go ahead and put the fuse behind the side cover back in, and then I'm going to put our bag on and show you how to change out those speakers. All right, so I didn't put my rubber caps on the gas tank earlier on the front. I'm going to go ahead and put those back on, but I didn't want to leave that step out and have you forget about it. So I put all of my bolts in a tray. So as I'm going along, if I forgot something, it's easily reminded. These are simple. They just slide right back on that front bracket. don't actually bolt on in any way. All right, so we're just gonna put our bag right back on. We're using all factory wiring for this. So no need to change anything about the wiring on the bag. There's no modification of the bag, so we don't have to cut anything or do any sanding or anything like that. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and slide our seat back on, then we'll get to those speakers. All right, seat's back on. 2 speakers to go. We'll take a few seconds just comparing those to the factory ones. When we're done with this, I'll take you into the radio. I'll show you how to set it up for this system. We'll go through a little bit more information about the EQs. And last test, always when you get done, is a polarity test. So you received a polarity test tool. You'll see past this video on our website in the step-by-step videos, there'll be a link to the polarity test, how it's done, as well as where to get that track to play through YouTube. You're just gonna hook through Bluetooth, play our YouTube video, and we're gonna listen to each speaker and make sure that they are firing the same way at the same time. Even one speaker out of phase is gonna mess up your mid-bass, your mid-range. It's not gonna sound full, it's gonna sound tinny and high-pitched. This system does not sound that way. It has a lot of mid-bass. It sounds fabulous when it's all correct. So we wanna do that at the end before we finish. But let's move on to getting those speakers put in. All right, first we're gonna open our lid. We're gonna remove our speaker grill. Now our speaker grill has T20. So this is our 4th tool we need, which is a T20 Torx driver. We're gonna remove the 4 screws holding the grill on. They're gonna be the shiny silver ones. All right, so now I'm gonna flip it over and remove that grill. Again, on this grill, we've already installed one of our Hog Badge logos that matches the one up there in the front, the silver outline, the black background. I think they look great. I'm gonna open it back up and I'm just gonna unplug my speaker. Just like on the front, you'll see the black one is the negative, the clear one is the positive. And we're gonna close it and remove this speaker. We'll do a comparison here in a minute between this and the new ones that Hertz has developed specifically for these lids. All right, so now you've removed your 4 screws, just lift your speaker up and let's look at it compared to this other one. All right, first thing you're gonna see is if you look at this cone, Harley did you really an injustice. They sold you a 5x7 speaker for a 6x9 lid. I think this was all on purpose. This was so that you would realize how bad it sounds and you'd start trying to do upgrades. You'd return to your dealership and you'd buy this in a 6x9. On top of that, they actually set your radio not to put as much sound to the rear speakers until you've paid them for those bigger speakers. It's like a $600 charge to get it back where it should have been. Thank God we do not have to be tied down to all these Harley things anymore with our new interface. And Hertz has built us a 6x9 with a new design flange. This flange is designed specifically to fit on the left or right side without any modification to the lid, because they also tried to shape it kind of funky to make sure that no traditional 6x9 would fit. We also have a larger neodymium magnet that fits right into that lid, right into that plastic that's already built in without any cutting in any way. And we have our positive and negative terminals that'll hook right up to those original terminals. Now, one thing we want to look at is there's a gasket on the factory speaker to keep water from going through. This is a waterproof speaker from Hertz, and they're going to send you 2 gaskets. So we need to install that gasket on the back of the speaker before we proceed. All right, so we're just going to line this gasket up with our holes. And as you do that, just make sure that it is on the metal portion of the speaker as you stick it, because that is what's going to keep you watertight. I'm just kind of guiding it, making sure it sticks to the actual metal portion. Nothing's hanging over too far. And then all the way around like that. Very, very simple. Now let's drop it in. So we want to make sure when we put this in that these terminals are facing the middle of the bag. That's where the factory wiring is. That's where they need to go. We're just going to set it down in here. You're going to see this new design actually clears everything down to this little tab that they'd built in so that nothing's going to be in the way, and we still clear our grill going back on. Very, very nice design. I'm so glad we were building these by hand, cutting them with a scroll saw, sanding them, painting them, making them fit. Now we just get them out of the box and they go right in. Now you can use the original hardware. And if you use the original hardware, what you're going to find out is the head of this screw is a little small. It will tighten it down. And if it goes all the way in, it's going to bust or go right through the back side of the little plastic block. The speaker itself came with some new screws as well. We'll probably start supplying you with some wafer-headed screws to go in to get a little bit more contact area and not go all the way through. So I'm going to use a few of those that I already have in my inventory. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and start each one of these screws in. Once I get them all started, then I'll tighten them down a little more. You'll see that gasket just kind of pulling in there, sealing everything up. Very simple install. All right, so one thing to keep in mind, there are 4 little legs on this grill that line up with 4 holes. Each one of those holes have a rubber insert. Make sure that you don't lose any of those, none of them fall out, because if they do, these screws are just long enough, they'll try to bust the face of your grill. So just visibly inspecting that they're all still there. So I'm going to use my knee to add some pressure to that grill while I just go back in with each one of these screws. All right, so just like we did on the front speakers, we're going to grab each one of these, we're going to squeeze it just a little tighter, make sure we get a good connection. And we're going to plug these in. See, this one here is marked positive. Squeeze that one just a little too tight. And then our negative is going to go on this side. All right, so they're on there good. You'll see our speaker actually clears this just perfectly, has that really large magnet, whereas that original speaker looks like it has a magnet. That is good size. But what you find out is it's just a plastic cap. So you can snap that plastic cap off, and under that is a really, really small magnet. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm not going to show you that process. It's the exact same thing again. I'll get that done. We'll be back with you in just a second at the radio, going through and doing our polarity test and showing you how it's set up. All right, so the bike's back together. We've got the ignition turned on. My phone is connected up via Bluetooth, and we're going to run the last test. This is a really important one. It's going to be our polarity test. So we're going to start it up. We're going to let this YouTube video, this is going to be on our step-by-step install videos. At the end of each one, we have a link to the polarity test right after it on our page. So if you're at volunteeraudio.com, you've been to step-by-step install videos, and you've watched this video, the next video under it is the polarity test track. I want you to load that up, and when you turn that on YouTube, you're going to hear some pops and some clicks. And this tool, when you hold this button down, is going to actually listen to each speaker, and it's going to give us a reading, either 3 green lights and a red light, or 3 red lights and a green light, and it's going to tell us which way our speakers are working as far as phase or polarity. We want them all to match. Now, if you followed along with this video and you did it the way that I've instructed, they should all match right off the bat, but that's why this tool's here, because when it's right, it sounds amazing. When it's wrong, you're going to be mad at me and think that I ripped you off, and it's nothing but treble. So we want to make sure that we've checked this, and we want to make sure it's right. So let's check our system out here. Okay, 3 green and a red. Same there. All right, let's move to the back one. It all matches just like it's supposed to, and it's going to sound great. But let's go into the radio. I want to show you a few things about the EQ inside of here now. All right, so let's go over here to the screen. Now, all of your EQs are going to work. HD signature tune will always be the loudest tune, but believe me, all the tunes are loud, so you don't have to necessarily pick that EQ. HD signature is 10 dB boosted over a flat custom EQ. The country, the jazz, the pop, rhythm and blues, all these other ones you see as you go down through here, they actually are just a variation of the HD signature where they cut certain things down. And that makes it where you hear either more of your bass or more of the treble and so on. But all of these can be used pretty well to almost full volume depending on the song and stay absolutely clear. You still have the ability to do a custom EQ. And anytime we're using a custom EQ or we're using this particular radio with our A2B interface, you're going to have a 7-band EQ. That is a parametric 7-band that can be used and will actively change the DSP inside the A2B interface. One last thing I want to show you, because I just think this is so cool, is we're going to go into our speaker setup inside the settings menu, and you're going to see now that we're done. It says volunteer audio powered by Siren HD PNA1. Now, if you had the factory amp, it's going to tell you it has an Apollo amp in it. This shows you that it is communicating digitally to our A2B interface and our new Hertz amplifier configuration. So this shows you that what you have in the bike. If you don't see that, you paid way too much and got way too little. And now the next thing is speaker status. So you can actually go in here to your speaker configuration, and no matter what you started with, you now have the adjustment to turn on all the other speakers. As you see here, I'm on stage 3. If you're on stage 2 or stage 3, you can just select one of them and then hit start test. And you're just going to select each one of the speakers in order, and it's going to show that it's passed. But you'll do that once you do your speaker configuration. This one already had the stage 3 Rockford on it, so no need to change it. But really, whether it be stage 2 or stage 3, you're going to have the same sound with our interface, because we're not actually changing anything inside. We're giving you the best sound all the time, whereas the factory limited you on sound until you bought their 6x9s. Then they turned it up for you. Auto volume still works. That's a question we keep getting. Speed volume works. So even if you go all the way up sitting still, you're not at full volume till you hit 60 miles an hour. It's going to turn it up a little bit more as it goes through that auto volume step. But I think the EQ sounds great. Go through, find your favorite one, whether it be rock, pop, country, so on, depending on what you listen to. Select one of those and listen to it. You're going to be blown away. I think I'm becoming a jazz man. I don't normally listen to jazz, but listening to jazz on this system is blowing me away, because it's got such a great bass note, hearing those saxophones, those highs. So I tell you, when you get it, bring you up some jazz. I've been listening to some Bonnie James. Check out some of the songs and see. I think you'll be blown away how musical it is, but it's going to sound really good with your classic rock, your modern rock, your country, and all the other ones as well. All right, so let's play something here now. I'm kind of stuck. I have to play you something copyright free to let you hear it, but I will tell you, I'm going to do a walk away video. We're going to do some riding footage on this bike. I'll film that, and it'll be in the next video following up after this. So we'll get that posted so you don't just have to hear what it sounds like in this room. So I know it's hard to hear bass on YouTube or through little headphones, through your phone, and I always try not to oversell bass, but man, this system is remarkable. I think you saw the bass note making my phone go all over the place there, but this is absolutely the best sounding systems I've ever heard on a Harley as far as quality of sound. The clarity, the bass notes, how musical it is. That was a little jazz feel there, and it's making me want to listen to a lot more jazz, as good as it sounds. But I'll do some other type of music on our walkway and some riding footage. But I think, as you've seen, it's easy to install. It's very well thought out. It's perfectly tuned, and these speakers sound amazing. It's everything that I'd ever want in a system on a bike, and if you're not happy with this, you need to look for happiness in something else, because audio is not going to do it for you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has encouraged you to take on a project like this and do it yourself, so you get that satisfaction of knowing it's done right. If this seems above and beyond what you're capable of doing, reach out to us. I'd love to meet you, do the install ourselves here. I think it'd be a great experience for you, and I'd like to see you as well. Give us a call if you have any questions at 1-844-30-AUDIO. We'd love to go over your bike, your build, your budget, help you build that perfect system for you, and answer those questions you may still have. Now, you can also ask questions below. Leave me something in the comment section. Tell me how awesome it is. Tell me who you are, where you are, what kind of bike you got. And if you got questions, leave that there also. Like the video, moves it up in search results. It helps us, and we thank you so much for that. And don't forget to subscribe to Volunteer Audio on YouTube. Also, follow us on Facebook to find out the latest in audio as it comes out. And we'll always be first to show you how to install it, how to use it, and find out if it's a great deal before you make the purchase. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.